All right, welcome everyone. Let's get right into it. Before you can even think about defending a network, you have to understand it first. How can you protect something you don't know exists? Well, that process of discovery, of gathering all that crucial intelligence, that's called reconnaissance. It's the absolute first step in vulnerability management, and it's a huge topic for your CySA Plus exam. So today, we're going to learn how to draw the map that'll guide every single one of your defensive moves. So, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with what reconnaissance actually is. Then we'll get into the two main flavors, active and passive discovery. After that, we'll check out the Analyst Toolkit, see how to put all the pieces together, and, most importantly, we'll wrap up with the absolute essentials for your CSI Plus exam. Let's get started. I really want you to think of yourself as an explorer for a minute. Imagine you've just landed on the shores of this vast, unknown digital continent. There are no signs, no maps, nothing. It's just you, and your job is to chart everything. Every server, every connection, every open port. You have to understand the terrain completely before you can even begin to build your defenses.
Okay, so let's put a formal definition to this. At its core, reconnaissance is really just the systematic process of gathering information. It's the bedrock for everything else you're going to do. Now here's the interesting part. An attacker uses these very same methods to find weaknesses. But for you as a defender, as an analyst, you're using the exact same playbook to understand your own turf so you can lock it down tight.
So when you're gathering all this intel, it really boils down to two fundamental paths you can take. You can either go right up to the front door and start knocking, that's active discovery, or you can hang back and just observe from a distance without anyone knowing you're there, and that's passive discovery. Getting this difference down is absolutely vital. And this slide just lays it all out perfectly, right? On the one hand, you've got active discovery. Think of it like walking down a hallway and rattling every single doorknob. Yeah, you'll find out which ones are unlocked pretty fast, but you're also making a ton of noise. It's loud, and you're probably going to get caught. On the other hand, there's passive discovery. This is more like being a private investigator, just sitting in a car across the street taking notes. It's way stealthier, much lower risk of setting off any alarms, but you might not get the full picture as quickly. It's always a trade-off. All right, let's dive into that first method, active discovery, or as I like to call it, knocking on the digital doors. In practice, this is all about sending packets, probes and queries directly to a target system. You're trying to get a response. You're essentially poking it with a stick to see how it reacts, and you learn from that reaction. And look, you simply cannot talk about active scanning without talking about Nmap. Seriously. It's the Swiss Army knife for any network analyst. This tool is an absolute legend for a reason. It's the industry standard for finding hosts and scanning ports, and trust me, you are going to need to know it inside and out. Okay, so check this out. This is what the output from a basic Nmap scan looks like. See that list? We've got port 22 open, that's SSH, which is how admins log in remotely. Port 80, that's your standard web traffic, and port 445, that's for file sharing. Every single one of these open ports is like an unlocked door into the system. A service that's just listening for someone to connect. This right here, this is your very first snapshot of the target's attack surface. But here's where it gets really powerful. Knowing a port is open is cool and all, but the real prize, the real intelligence is knowing exactly what software is running on that port. So by just adding a simple command, SV for version detection, Nmap doesn't just say, there's a web server. No, it tells us it's an Apache HTTPD version 2.4.7 web server. And now you can just go look up that specific version and see if there are any known published vulnerabilities. That, my friends, is the jackpot. Okay, let's pause for a really, really important warning about all this active scanning stuff. Because you're directly touching these systems, you can accidentally cause problems or worse. So you must, and I mean always, get permission before you scan anything that isn't yours. In the real world, we call this your get-out-of-jail-free card. It's the documented proof that you're one of the good guys, so your legitimate security work doesn't get mistaken for a malicious attack. Don't ever forget that.
All right, let's completely switch gears now. We've talked about knocking on doors, so let's move on to the more subtle art of reading the digital signs. This is passive discovery, and the whole idea here is to learn everything you can about a target without ever sending a single packet to it. Instead, you're like a detective, piecing together clues from public records, search engines, and log data that's already out there.
Okay, everybody, listen up, because this is a huge tip for the exam. The CySA Plus objectives specifically call this out. You have to understand the difference between active and passive scanning. This isn't just some abstract theory. It's a guaranteed testable concept. So that comparison we looked at a few slides back, you need to have that locked down, for sure.
So, one of the biggest gold mines for passive information is just log files. Seriously. Your network devices, your routers, your firewalls, they log everything. The problem is, that's a mountain of data. Understanding these logging levels, like the Cisco ones you see here, is the key. It helps you cut through all the noise, all the routine everything's fine messages to find the nuggets of gold, the critical errors, the security alerts. It's how you find the needle in the digital haystack.
And here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Look at this router log. You see a whole bunch of denied packets, right? They're all coming from one place, going to one place, but hitting a bunch of different ports one after another. Now, to the untrained eye, that's just a bunch of text. But to you, the analyst, you see that pattern, and you know exactly what it is. That's the footprint of a port scan. And the best part? You spotted it completely passively just by reading the signs that were already there.
Okay, so we've got active scanning covered with Nmap, and we've talked about passive analysis with logs. But the Analyst Toolkit is way bigger than that. Now we're going to expand it and talk about some incredibly powerful tools for gathering open source intelligence, or OSINT for short. Let's start with two of the absolute fundamentals, whois and NSLOOKUP. These are like the bread and butter of OSINT. With a simple whois command, you can look up who owns any domain name, find their contact info, all kinds of stuff that's just publicly available. Then you have NSLOOKUP, which is just as vital. It's the tool that translates a simple website name that we humans understand, like google.com, into an IP address that computers and scanners can actually work with.
So you start gathering all this passive data. Domain names, emails, IPs, and pretty soon you're just drowning in information. It's overwhelming. And that's exactly where a tool like Maltego comes in to save the day. Maltego is amazing. You feed it all these separate pieces of information, and it automatically goes out and finds the hidden connections between them. It basically connects the dots for you and lays it all out in this beautiful visual graph so you can see the relationships instantly. So now, we have to connect all the dots. We've done some active scanning, we've done some passive analysis, we've gathered our OSINT. The whole point of all this work, the end goal, is to build a complete picture of the target. We're taking all these raw lists of data and turning them into something you can actually use, what we call actionable intelligence. And here it is. This is the payoff for all that hard work. What you're looking at is the network topology view from ZenMap, which is basically a user-friendly face for Nmap. It takes all of that command line text, all those IPs and ports and connections, and it magically transforms it into a visual map of the network. Instantly, you can see how things are connected, you can spot the critical servers, you finally get to see the structure of the network you're supposed to be protecting. Okay, let's wrap this up by focusing on what really matters for your CySA Plus exam. We're going to zero in on the absolute must-know essentials. Pay close attention here.
All right, here's your checklist. Number 1, active versus passive. You need to be able to explain the difference in your sleep, what they are, and the pros and cons of each. Next up, your key tools. You've got to know what Nmap, Angry IP Scanner, Maltego, and Recon NG are used for. What's their main job? Third, Nmap scans. Don't just run them. You have to know how to read the output. What do those open ports mean? What service is running? What version is it? And finally, the big picture. Understand that all of this reconnaissance is really about asset discovery, simply finding out what's on your network so you can protect it.
So we'll end on this question for you to think about. You've learned how to draw the map of the digital territory. The real question is, what are you going to do with it? Because creating that map, well, that's just step one. The real work of an analyst starts right now. With that intelligence, you can start building your defenses, shutting down services that don't need to be open, patching vulnerable software you just discovered, and investigating weird connections. Remember, the map isn't the destination, it's the foundation for everything that comes next.